senior most civil position in the state government. She has been in various departments such as social sector, IT, infrastructure, industry, commerce, skill development, and women empowerment. She works like an entrepreneur and has left a positive impact for many for being innovative, people-friendly, and optimistic, and even taking tough administrative decisions. Please welcome Srimati K. Ratna Prabha, IAS, former Chief Secretary, Government of Karnataka, and current President of Ubuntu Consortium.
Thank you, Deepika.
Thank you so much for being here, madam. So in the morning, in the pre-lunch, I shared 2 anecdotes about your story, how you have grown through the ranks and how men are not used to having women in power. But I'd like you to share with our audience what it means from starting your career as an assistant commissioner from Bidar to retiring as being the chief secretary, the highest civil position that anybody can take in the state government, and what it meant for you growing through these ranks.
Yeah, that's what I was just telling Deepika, that sharing now 42 years of your journey in 10 minutes is very difficult. But then, yeah, I think I owe whatever I am today to my parents. That is very important, I think, for a girl or a woman, that you have parents who encourage you throughout your life. And I had 2 older brothers, and my mother was a doctor, my father was a civil servant. So I think it was in the family that one has to first study and do something in life. I'm talking about a generation 40 years back, where most of my classmates were studying and getting married and, doing smaller jobs. And then when I wrote the exam, and I was hoping that I would be getting Andhra Pradesh, which was my home state, but then I got my next state, which is Karnataka, which was my second preference. It was okay with me because my mother's from Karnataka. So all my relatives are in Bangalore and other places. So that was good. But then the most interesting thing is at that point of time in Karnataka, there are very few women getting into service, and all the women who got into service were posted either in Ramnagar or in Mysore or, Dodbalapur, around Bangalore. And I think I was the first person to be posted to the last corner of Karnataka, which was Bidar, which most of you would not have heard of. And that happened because there was some problem there, and the chief minister then, Sri Ramakrishna Hegde, told the chief secretary that he wants a fresh face out there because there was a lot of, in those days also, charges of corruption and things like that. So I was posted out of the blue. And when I landed in Bidar, the people in Bidar had not seen a lady officer. That's what I mentioned. Yeah, I think, can we just silence it or something? I thought I did it, but yeah, just put it in. So then they had not seen a woman officer, in fact, an employee in their life. So when I landed there, I was fresh out of college. I went with my mother. I brought this book. I wanted to gift it to Deepika here. This Chronicles of an AC Sab. This is a book only on my first posting. So out of my memory, 35. So when I went there, I took my mother along with me. And then when we went there, we were cleaning the house. Somebody came and rang the bell because some women had come. There's some issue. They came to know that there's a lady posted there, rang the bell. And when I opened the door, I was reminded of the movie Bobby, where Dimple opens the door with this thing, and Rishi Kapoor is standing on the other side. It was something like this women. And they saw me and they said, AC ge kariri, means call the AC. Because they never thought there could be a young girl who can be an assistant commissioner. So I pulled my mother and brought her. And, and they started narrating all their woes to my mother. And since my mother is from Karnataka, she could understand Kannada. And she said, okay, come to office tomorrow. And then she told me, don't push me out like this. You should learn to meet your people. Because you're the AC here. And then the next day when I went to the office, and when they saw me getting down from the Jeep, they were so shocked, and they're feeling embarrassed, in fact. And that's how I got into my first seat. And the office was all full of men. That's what I narrated, because the men were used to sirring somebody. So they did not know how to address me. Especially I had a PA. So PA has to come and take down my day schedule and things like that. So the PA was so uh, confused. In fact, he didn't know. So he used to, and say, didn't know how to address me. And then slowly, because it's a Muslim area, people started call some AC Saab, AC Saab, and that's how they started calling me AC Saab, which was more comfortable for them. And since I have very little time, I can just say it's so difficult for a woman when you occupy a place. The office is full of men. Politicians are all men. Your superiors are men. The client also, the people who come to your office are also men. And you're the only woman. So they feel very uncomfortable how to deal with you. So you have to make them comfortable. So that is very important. And whether you're a man or a woman doesn't come into play at that point of time. You're a person, from person to person, you need to interact. And I must say that it was such an interesting experience. People were so affectionate. And I went around the district. In those days, there were a lot of drinking water problems. The bore wells had to be drilled, housing programs, a lot of work had to be done. And my collector or the deputy commissioner said, you go. I won't come. You go and you do the work. You will learn the work. And if there's any problem, I'll be the person who will handle it. And that's how I went round. And I joined on 1st of September, 1983. And 1st of September, 84. When I entered the office, I found the entire office decorated. And then the staff was sitting there and the usual chai and biscuits were on the table. And I was saying, what's happening? Why this is happening? And then everybody was smiling. And they said, ma'am, you completed 1 year today. And we wanted to celebrate your completion of 1 year. And one of the guys got up and said, we were so apprehensive about having a woman as our boss. But this is the best experience we had so far. And we wanted to show our love and affection by, hosting this small get together. So that is how from, apprehensions, I was accepted by the people, and that was the beginning of my career. Being accepted by the men is very, very difficult. And that's how, because you need to work with them, take them along, not make them to feel that you are a woman, and not make them to feel uncomfortable is the best way of administration.
That's great to hear. The next question that I had is that, ma'am, you are known to take tough administrative decisions, right? So as a leader and as a woman, we heard in the previous panel that women do not speak up when the opportunity is there. Otherwise, the opportunity just passes by. We are apprehensive, which is a limitation to us. How, as a leader and a woman, do you need to be thinking? Do you need to be acting to take these do or die situation and decisions?
Yeah. See, taking tough decisions, people think it is tough, but I think taking a decision at the toughest time is something which people will remember you for the rest of their lives. And I have always spoken out my mind. I've always, taken my own decisions. One now reads so much about political interference and officers being scared to take decisions. I don't know, throughout my life, I've been taking my own decisions and moving around. And none of the leaders or politicians objected to it, or the seniors. Sometimes they feel what you have done is, not a right thing, but then one goes on. I can give several examples, but since the time is short, I'll give one example. Like there was this government order which said that we have something called a compassionate appointment. That is, when an employee dies in service, his son is given a job so that the family, continues to have some income. And the government order said that the son should be given the job. When I went as Divisional Commissioner Gulbarga, there are a lot of mothers who came forward and said they had 2 daughters or they had 1 daughter. And this GO was coming in the way because they don't have a son. Just because they don't have a son, they should not be deprived of, the family getting somebody to take the family forward. So I took the decision of giving the job to the daughter, whomever the mother preferred. And then my clerks, they came and said that, it is the son who takes care of the family. And I said, the daughter also can take care of the family. It's not that only the son. Where is the guarantee that the daughter-in-law will take care of the mother-in-law? I mean, whether the son or daughter, it's left to the person. So I took that decision of giving the jobs to the girls. And later on, when I became chief secretary and after I retired, somebody questioned it and High Court upheld that decision that, daughter also can be given a job. So I think sometimes I feel the rules are there, but the rules are meant for the welfare of the people. And if those rules do not apply practically to a common man, one can slightly bend it. That's what I feel. And I've taken those kind of several decisions much before government could think 30 years back. I've given house sites in the name of women. I've given lands in the names of women, and I've convinced the politicians. The very important thing, the next thing is, how do you manage a politician? I've convinced the politician that if a benefit has to be given to a man, which has been given from centuries, same thing can be given to a woman because it goes to the family, and they have agreed. Taking them along, we have done several government schemes.
That is so nice to hear. Just a last question from my side is that you've been in the political journey throughout. What can you share with our audience, your learnings from the government sector that can be applied to the non-government sector?
Yeah. See, government is meant for the people, and there are several programs in the government which, have to reach to the common man. But at times it doesn't reach because people do not know, because there's so many government schemes that people do not know which scheme is applicable to whom. And as an NGO who are working in a particular sector, the NGOs can support the government in implementing the government schemes. As far as we know that when we were in the government initially, the NGOs were looked down upon. When we started our career, people were quite apprehensive about NGOs and the private sector. But now, over a period of time, government, the private sector, the NGOs, I think they all work together, and it adds value to the work which government is doing. Anything else?
Thank you so much. My questions are done. Ma'am will be around here. So if you all have any questions, more than happy to take it ahead. Thank you so much, Madam, for being here today.
So I just want to say one thing. See, as a government servant, the people have a lot of expectations from you. Not people like you, I mean people who are very poor, who want to have benefits from the government. They access government or government offices very frequently. And what I had done was, I was trying to make myself available to the people. Making ourselves available to the people is the most important thing. So every Monday, I used to call it a public grievance day. And I used to keep the whole day to meet the public, receive their petitions, and try to solve it. And I continued it till I became the chief secretary. So one amusing thing before I close was that because 3 o'clock, the Vidhan Sabha gates are open. So my corridor used to be always full of people. And one day our CM came out, Mr. Siddharama, and he saw the crowd. And he said, who are these people and why have they come? And they said, they've come to meet the chief secretary. And he said, why so many people have come to meet the chief secretary? He was so surprised. But that kind of faith and confidence people had that I can solve their problems. And a stage came when people were waiting for 3 to 4 hours to meet me. And one day when somebody came inside, that person was looking so, faint. I thought he's going to faint because then, I quickly took out a chocolate from my purse and gave it to him. I said, put it in your mouth. And he really, I think, enjoyed it. So after that, I realized that people are waiting for you for 3-4 hours. Some of them may be having sugar problems. We don't know what. So I asked the KMF to get some buttermilk and all this different flavored milk and keep it in the fridge. And if people are waiting for more than 1 hour, we used to give them all this flavored milks and all that, so that they don't get tired. But that is the kind of confidence and the faith they have, because you're the last seat of power. And if you can't help them, then nobody else can help them. So that is why I used to take out a lot of time, even till evening 7 or 8, and meet people and try to resolve their problems. And I think that was one of the reasons for my popularity. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. And that is why we should have more women in power. Thank you. That is what we want from our role models, right? People who are accessible at all times. Up next, we have a very good friend who's flown all the way from Switzerland, along with her little one, who's already being trained on gender diversity. May I welcome Geraldine, who is the founder of Jose. This is a hybrid session, so there are going to be our speakers as well, our guests on Zoom.
Thank you very much, Deepika. I think that works. Thank you. Okay, so a warm welcome also from my side. It's a pleasure to be here today. I had a great fun by organizing this Winspiration Day together with the great Swissnex team. And so we heard a lot about gender diversity. You had a great workshop about unconscious bias. And this afternoon, it's actually a bit more about yourself and your own body. As she said, I am from Zurich. I work for AWS, Amazon Web Services, in cloud tech, but also I founded my own project, which is called Jose. And Jose aims to empower women's health through body education and movement. And it all started with my own story. So I would just maybe ask, so we still have the panelists, Anna, Deepika, maybe you can already turn off your camera for now, and I will then ask you to turn it up as soon as we start. But let's start with a small keynote first. So my own story is that I lacked my own menstrual cycle between my 20s and my 30s. And I did go to a lot of doctors. I got from different diagnoses. And yeah, I struggled a bit with why this happened. So I didn't really understand. Until there were two main, I would say, like key events. One was that finally a doctor took time to explain that the menstrual cycle starts actually in the brain. So it's your hormones that help orchestrate your menstrual cycle. And the second one is that I met a friend, Lisa, who wrote a book. This is the book that is called The Astonishing Science About the Female Body. And with that, I finally came to the conclusion that it is all about hormones and that I experienced a hormonal imbalance. And that made me study more, read more, and until I think today, I really understand my body. And what I want is to raise awareness about this and to make sure that you also understand what happens every month. So just maybe a quick question in the beginning. Maybe you raise your hand, like who from you confidentially thinks that you know what happens every month and why you have emotional ups and downs? Okay. So for those at home, it's only 4 hands raising. So I think it's good that we have this session today. So I give you a glimpse from the reproductive journey of a woman only in 15 minutes, which is not too long, but hopefully you can learn already something now. Good. So everything starts with the menarche. The menarche is when girls in their puberty have their first menstrual cycle. The average age of girls having their first period is around 13 years old, even though they mostly have puberty signs like growing pubic hair, etc., already before. And then we have the menstrual cycle. And now you're asking yourself, like, why does she show just a little mice here, which is actually an elephant shred? So the thing is, like, when you ask yourself, why do women actually have a menstrual cycle? We can compare and we can look at animals, what we usually do in research, right? But what happens with animal is that actually many animals, like for example, rabbits, they only ovulate spontaneously when they have any kind of sexual interactions. So there's only a very few sort of animals who have regular menstrual cycle, as for example, this small elephant shred. So what that means is that we cannot learn too much from research with animals. So why do women have a menstrual cycle? So there's different theories, but one of the theory is actually that we get a little bit more selective about which embryo we actually grow into a human body. Because what you know is, right, it's quite an investment. So it takes 9 months to grow a baby or a fetus. And that is why it also makes sense to really only pick the embryo that makes sense to grow. That is one theory. There is a lot of other theories behind this. And why should you care today? So obviously, or the most obvious reason is when you want to get pregnant, you should know your menstrual cycle because you also need to know your fertile window. But there's other reasons. Not so if pregnancy is not topic, it is still important. We are influenced by hormones. The main two sexual hormones are estrogen and progesterone. And estrogen, for example, helps to protect your brain. So it helps against Alzheimer and dementia. It also protects bones to break down. So if you lack your menstrual cycle, your bones automatically get more loose, and you're more likely to suffer from osteoporosis. And also it protects your heart. So women before menopause have a less chance or less likely chance to have a heart attack. Since after menopause, the hormonal situation changes, you are less protected against these diseases. So let's look at the menstrual cycle. This is a bit tricky. So your menstrual cycle, very clear. I think most of you know, it takes a couple of days. The average day is 28. However, important, there is no like length. Like there's not like one length that counts for everyone. It's very individual, and it can also even depend between culture. And then you have an ovulation day, which is on average about 14 days in the middle, and then a couple of days before where you have your fertile window. And all of this is orchestrated by hormones. So what are hormones? You can imagine of hormones are like small little floating keys that float through your body, and when they find the right receptor, they trigger some processes or some key chain reactions. And hormones also often interact with neurotransmitters, for example, serotonin. Maybe you heard about this. Serotonin is the neurotransmitter that makes you feel happy, joyful, and this is what we experience in the beginning of the menstrual cycle. So you should for sure remember two main hormones, which are estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen helps building up serotonin, which makes you more happy and more like at ease in the beginning of the menstrual cycle. Whereas progesterone, that comes a bit in the later stage of your cycle, has an effect on the amygdala, which is the emotion or the center of the emotions in your brain. And that means that you often feel a bit more calm and relaxed when you have more progesterone or the higher level of progesterone. And this is why women experience different moods alongside the cycle. It's because of the hormones. So let's look into these moods. So again, you see the menstrual cycle, and the first part of the menstrual cycle is called the follicular phase. And here estrogen is dominant. So you can see estrogen slowly increases until it has its peak just before, right before ovulation. And with the serotonin that you have in your body, you often feel happy and good. And this is really the nice phase of the cycle. And then nature was very, very smart to make us a little bit aroused around ovulation. Also makes sense to have any kind of sexual interaction then if you want to get pregnant. And then what happens after this day? So after this day, estrogen slowly goes down and the second hormone, progesterone, starts to increase. Progesterone is actually like key in order to maintain a pregnancy. And as I said before, it has some effects on your center of emotions in the brain. And it makes you a bit more calm. It makes you often, and this is only like on average, right? You can experience that differently. But this is often the time when you want to stay a bit more home and a bit more closer to others. And then what happens at the very end? At the very end, progesterone and estrogen, so both hormones, they go down. So you lack the effect of hormone. And this is often called also at the PMS day, the premenstrual syndrome, where you might feel anxious, you might feel stressed, you might feel angry. And this is actually because you lack the effect of hormones. So it's wrong to say that you're hormonal on these days. You're not. So you don't have the hormones. So these are a bit the moods. Again, on average, for everyone, it's a bit different, but this is what we know about the different moods on hormones. Now let's go to we talk about pregnancy, which is creating life. And this is the largest body transformation for women that happens. I could probably talk hours about what happens in your body during pregnancy, and I experience this by my own at the moment. But I just want to focus on the hormonal influence again. So hopefully you can see the different hormones. So the first hormone that we experience in pregnancy is called HCG. And this prevents the shredding of the uterus lining. And this is also the hormone that is behind the morning sickness. And then once, after a couple of weeks, when the placenta is fully grown, HCG goes down. And then it does at this time when progesterone and estrogen grows, because the placenta is responsible to create estrogen and progesterone. Progesterone is important, as I said before, to maintain the pregnancy, but it's also important to prevent any early contractions. So if we wouldn't have progesterone, it could already start to contract too early. And estrogen, it is important for cell growth, and also it increases the blood flow. And overall, those two hormones, they are at extreme level. So you can see this one in the red little box here. These are the hormonal fluctuations during the monthly cycle. So you can imagine on which trip I am at the moment. So I am on a huge hormonal trip, and it feels very good. So often pregnant women are very happy. And I can also confirm that the last argument I had with my partner is actually quite a long time ago. So they go up, and then there are a lot of other hormones that are important as well. We have the prolactin, which is for the milk production, and we also have the relaxin. And as the name says, the relaxin helps to relax our ligaments and bones around the pelvis in order to prepare for giving birth. A funny fact is also that relaxin helps actually to relax your feet as well. So that's often when you're pregnant, you get 1 or 2 sizes more for your shoes. So you need to buy new shoes after pregnancy. And then at the very end, there's a huge drop of the hormones. So as soon as the placenta goes out, all these hormones go down. And this is the time when 80% of women experience a baby blues, meaning that we're very emotional, and sometimes this start can be a bit tricky. But good that we also have oxytocin, which helps us to have a lot of, or feel a lot of love for our baby. And something we cannot talk about today is then when the baby blues comes a bit more severe, which is a postpartum depression, also a very interesting topic. But this is actually then not, let's say this is then more severe when you feel the influence of lacking the hormones even more. Checking my time, good. One interesting small fact is that your brain changes as well when you're pregnant. So the amygdala grows and increases in its size, meaning that you are less risky, or you are more risk averse after being pregnant, which is also probably quite smart from the nature, because we need to take care of our babies. So Lisa, who wrote the book, she was actually a skier, and she used to ski down this mountain before. And as soon when she had the baby, she just didn't dare to do anything like this anymore. So it's also very normal to be a bit more risk averse. And then the last transformation, which is the menopause. So, so women are often perceived as the Cruella de Vils in menopause, who have crazy hot flashes and depressions. And it's actually a little bit unfair. And important to know here as well is that the actual difficult time is, and we will hear it more with our panelists, is the perimenopause. Because the perimenopause is the phase before the menopause when you actually have the symptoms, and the menopause is then only when you finish having your menstrual cycle. So as a last note here before we start our panel is that, again, I ask myself as well, like why do we have menopause, and why do we live after menopause? Because when you look at animals again, there's almost no animal or no female animal who live after the reproductive age. There's only a subset of whales, as for example, the orca, who live after they finish their reproductive age. And here we have a lot of different theories as well, but the most common or the most accepted theory is the grandmother theory. And this means that they analyze data from cultures like years ago, and they found out that women who have a living mother, like the grandmother, they used to have double as much as babies as women without. And also, the closer the grandmother lived, the more babies they had and the more babies survived than when they lived further away. With that, I think it's a nice note, or to end this keynote, in saying that we should be very thankful for our grandmothers and having women who live beyond the reproductive age. And yeah, I think it's a nice way to remember that menopause is not only bad at all, but it's actually very important for the evolution of our species. Thank you very much. So I just can strongly recommend you to read the book if this is something that you're interested in, and if you want to know more. The book that is called Go Figure, The Astonishing Science of the Female Body by Lisa Falco, and you can order it online. It's in English. And I think, yeah, it really helped me a lot to understand, and I hope you will enjoy it as well. And now we start with the first panel discussion. I can already see Claire and Oana are here. It's great. So I would also ask to join me on stage Dr. Elisa Schreuli and Dr. Smita. Sit there. Thank you.
Almost 2 decades now. So I think she summarized it really well, a woman's journey from menarche to menopause. That was excellent. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So it's a great pleasure to have you. Maybe, yeah, great. I think we can see you both. Elisa, just on the camera, I think you need to come a little bit left, yeah, a little bit towards Dr. Smita. Just that at home they can see you. Yes, perfect. Okay, cool. So we start with our first panel discussion, which actually takes on the topic about the menstrual cycle and the hormonal influence during the menstrual cycle. And I have the pleasure to have 4 panelists here. We have women's health experts and femtech founders. So we have Oana and Claire, both founders and the CEO of own startups, of own femtech startups. Oana, you are a femtech business consultant, a fertility patient advocate, and a certified health coach. You are the head of partnership for Proof. And Proof is a startup that helps women testing their hormones at home, combining it with an app so that you can actually really track, plan, and optimize your hormonal levels. And Claire, you are the co-founder and CEO of Loop Neurora. Loop is a product in development currently to treat the #1 cause of infertility, which is PCOS. You might have heard about this. It's polycystic ovarian syndrome. And Loop leverages microelectrodes combined with a wearable device, providing local stimulation on demand. And then we have you, Dr. Smita. As you said, you're a gynecologist practicing over 20 years already, and you work for Proactive for Her.
Yes.
Proactive for Her is a in-clinic here in Bangalore who focuses on providing women's health care. And important here is to mention that they really offer a holistic, personalized, and confidential healthcare for women.
Yes, absolutely. We believe in providing a safe space for women to discuss all their concerns and to go beyond the fact that being a woman is not just beyond something more than going forward from being a mother to a whole woman. Yeah.
Thank you. And then last but not least, Dr. Elisa Streuli. We already had her in the morning on the panel. She is here from Switzerland on a sabbatical today, and she is a teacher and consultant in organizational psychology at the University of Applied Science. And Elisa, you wrote a book about how women in a senior management position in bigger Swiss companies made it to the top. So you will take the, let's say, the organizational and workplace perspective in this panel. Thank you very much. So let's start first on picking up what I just said before in my keynote, right, Dr. Elisa? So there is a hormonal influence in our cycle. This is clear. What I wanted to know is from you, what are the potential effects of these hormonal changes on a mental and physiological performance of women?
Yeah. So actually the hormones go a long way beyond psychological or emotional behavior of a woman. So it kind of encompasses a larger than life reflection onto the woman's profession or personal life. I'm sure Professor will be able to add on to that, because it not only affects her day-to-day lifestyle, but also her decision-making. There could be a lot of conflicts in decision-making, brain fog, what we can call, because of the hormonal ups and downs. And not only these, added stress can make things worse. And there are a lot of hormonal changes which again predispose to stress and which can lead to emotional breakdown in women. So I think it's very important for women to understand that there's a ever-changing internal milieu, and which is affected by an external environment as well. And it's very important for us to seek out compassionate people around us who can understand. And it's very essential to have workplaces which are more empathetic to women and who understand what women go through on a day-to-day basis. And I think all organizations are growing up to meet this demand for women. Yes.
Yeah, we're gonna talk a bit about the influence also, or what can organizations do. But when we stick to the women itself for now, often at work we are also so we have a stressful work, we have a lot to do, etc. So what might be some challenges that women experience only because of this hormonal influence when it comes to the professional environment, like for example experiencing stress?
Yeah, so the first culprit, I would say, would identifying that it's your hormones or identifying the changes that are happening inside you to be the primary cause, because we always try to attribute it to lack of time, lack of, certain facilities, or, it's always good to understand that we could be in that phase of the cycle where we just need a little more understanding and empathy to ourselves before we expect it from others. So I think that open window to, accommodate for that little bit of hormonal fluctuations is very essential. So I would say women go to fill in their schedule to 120% of their time slots, but I would say bring it down to 80%. Give yourself that 20% room, give yourself that space where you can, take a breath and understand what's happening with you, because we all need a moment in time to heave a sigh, to understand what we're doing, which is very essential. Yeah.
Thank you. So now we talked a bit about the hormones, and today we have a lot of products, fortunately, in order to track hormones, right? We have tracking apps, we have menstrual cycle calendars, we have body temperature, like measurements that we can use. So I would like to ask you, Oana and Claire, could you discuss a bit the benefits and limitations of these tracking methods? Maybe you start, Oana.
Yes, I would like to make a small disclaimer. I have a very bad cold. And so if I ever turn my camera off for 10 seconds, it's not because I'm rude, it's because I'm coughing. This being said, very happy to be here. And yes, indeed, the way we are tracking our cycles have evolved a lot throughout decades. It all started by tracking cervical mucus, and then we started measuring BBT, and then the calendar apps appeared. All this may be good, but they have a lot of limitations. Cervical mucus is a very good indicator, you know, in your fertile window, to detect your fertile window, but it is also impacted by a lot of other things. Like, for example, if you've had intercourse the evening prior, your vaginal discharge might be different, right? BBT also can be impacted by a lot of factors, what we are eating, what we are drinking, are we smoking, did we sleep in a cold room or in a warm one, did we snuggle during the night, and also it takes a lot of time for a woman, months and months in a row, to detect an actual pattern. And the apps are fantastic. They are a very good way for a woman to actually, you know, to accompany her cycle. But the reality of the apps is that they work perfectly well when your cycle is regular. Like for someone who has, let's say, a 28-day cycle with an ovulation occurring around cycle day 13 or 14, the menstrual app is perfect. But if you're having irregular cycles, then the app will not know that. And the app is only going to give you information that you previously fed it previous cycles.
Yeah.
It doesn't have any way to know what's happening in your body. So because we're talking about hormones, the actual, you know, the best way to measure your hormones is to actually track your hormones. Measure them in blood or in urine or in your saliva. Because you were mentioning Prove, it is a startup that helps you track your hormones in urine. We only work with urine. And actually, our founder, Dr. Amy Beckley, is the one who invented the PDG test, which measures the urinary metabolite of progesterone, which is able to confirm ovulation, but also to make sure that progesterone is above a certain threshold throughout the implantation window. So this being said, you can very well measure your hormones in urine or in blood. You can also use an app. You can also use cervical mucus. The thing is that the more you know, the better it is, because it all comes down to education and to getting to know your own body so that you can detect when something's off and potentially fix it so that you achieve a better hormonal balance and overall a well-being balance, because that's what hormones are about, right? Beyond.
Thank you. Yeah, I anyway want to know a bit more about the underlying research of Proof as well, but maybe first, Claire, do you agree with these benefits and limitations, or do you have anything else to add here?
Yeah, I mean, I would add that I think just self-advocacy is key. And so in terms of, you know, a woman who recognizes that something doesn't feel quite right, you know, to trust their instincts around, you know, something is off, but then all of this data is just additional information that can be used, put into context, bearing in mind, you know, Dr. Google's not perfect, but doctors aren't perfect, right? They're doing the best job they can with limited information when they're interacting with you. And so being an advocate in that process, I think kind of better health outcomes will arise from that. You know, I think from my own experience, you know, I'm someone who's very comfortable going through scientific papers. So when I was going through my own fertility journey, that's what I did. I was like, okay, I went to my doctor. I was like, here's 3-4 things I'd like you to test for. And so, you know, at the time he was like, well, it's probably age related, right? You know, but actually we found through that testing, you know, a serious issue that had been caused by my first child. So, you know, it does change outcomes to be able to be armed with information, to be able to inform yourself, but obviously within the context, right? So it's just, you know, more data, more information to feed in, and it might just speed up the process of figuring out, what's going on if there's something that's not quite right. There's lots of exciting things going on, like Love Prove, love what they're doing. I was talking to a company, SA Quinn, out of, it means woman in Danish, it's QVIN. They're looking for specific disease biomarkers in menstrual blood. Well, of course, menstrual blood is this amazing source of information as well. So, I think there's so many exciting innovations out there that are really going to change the game here that aren't limited like something like basal body temperature tracking, right? Which is easy to kind of misinterpret or get wrong or be influenced by some external factors.
Thank you, Claire. I wanna look here in the round. We have so many great women here today. Is there anyone who wants to share any kind of experience or challenges they had with such tracking apps, or maybe even a question about how to track your cycle? You need to make them. I think on otherwise the audience can.
So just on tracking the cycle itself using apps, given all the new data privacy rules that are there across countries in your own countries, and that these apps or the devices tend to be more global in nature, how can women also safeguard their own private data? What are the startups companies doing? And
Yes, that's a perfect question. That would have been mine as well. So we talk about data privacy. Oana, what do you like? What are considerations or maybe like guidelines that women can take when they use such apps? And also maybe from your view as a company, like what do you do in order to safeguard health data?
Yes, I think this is a very good question in the actual context, where just a week ago, if I'm not mistaken, another company has been found guilty of selling women's data to third parties. I'm talking about a fertility app. And so obviously, like anything these days, because we say that internet is forever, and we say that sharing data is very dangerous, and it could be, obviously, we have to make sure, I mean, what I do, not as part of the femtech industry, but what I do as a person, when I share data with whatever third party, I just make sure that there is a disclaimer that, assures you that there is no selling of data. Of course, that doesn't mean that people do not break disclaimers, but it's just, we can just do as much to cover our bases. In regards to Prove, we have this sort of disclaimer. We also have put in place, following Roe versus Wade in the United States, of a system in our app where people, once they stop using the app and they do not want the information there anymore, they can just basically destroy their file, like they can delete it. And once deleted, it's deleted from our database, like it's just gone forever. So we give this power to women because we want them to feel entitled to do whatever they want with their data and with their information. This is very important, like I said, especially in actual context where selling data has become a huge business, unfortunately, and nobody wants to find themselves in the middle of such a scandal, of such a situation.
Thank you. There's another question.
So you spoke about sharing data. So I've got a question, like two things. Has there been any thought put into the ethics of sharing this data with, say, partners, husbands, parents, as somebody who's like, that if as individuals staying with menstruating people for a longer duration of time, this kind of data does affect them? Pardon? Yeah, but this is about the apps being able to share this data with partners and others, where you have a lot of times these apps may not be accessible to people who are not literate. So somebody else has to do the data entry for them. So let's say for a healthcare worker in a village,
Right.
they like we have ASHA workers, and they kind of help out hundreds of women in one village at a time. So is there any code, or is there any kind of
Yes. So the way our app functions is that at the end you start testing, and at the end of the testing period, you get an ovulation report depending on what kind of kits you're using. Because we have the PDG test, which is the urinary metabolite of progesterone. We also have the FSH test, which is a quantitative one, so that it gives you an insight on your ovarian reserve. We have LH strips, and we also have a complete kit, which is available in the United States, tracking all 4 sexual cycle hormones throughout the cycle. So at the end of the testing period, you get an ovulation report that you can download, and you can share it with your doctor. You can share it with whomever you want. That is for women who want to use the app. The app has been introduced quite late in the stage of proof, because initially we started with a PDG test, and the PDG test can be read quantitatively with the app, but can also be read by eye on a positive negative way of detecting hormones. So this is very simple. It's the opposite of the pregnancy test, where you have a second line if the test is positive. Well, in the case of proof, if the test is positive, the second line disappears completely. Obviously, in order to know that, you would need to read the leaflet, which is inside the package. So for women who are not literate, they will obviously need some help in order to understand how to use the test. But other than that, it's just so simple. You know, it's the classical dip and wait and read test. Like you collect a bit of urine, you dip the test, you wait for it to develop 10 minutes, and then you read it. It's positive, it's negative. So women can use our products without the app if they want to, but if they want quantitative results, they will need to use the app. It's not one without the other. We wanted to make it as easy as possible for women to be able to understand where they are in the hormonal journey, and to help them make choices about it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So we talked about also India, and there will be some questions later as well. I'll continue now, and then we can take them at the end. Thank you. So Dr. Smita, in India, how was the situation? Do women come to Proactive for her, or the clinic you work, and actually take some results with them, and come to you and say, hey, this is what I learned about my cycle? Like, what's the situation?
Yes, you will be surprised. There's a lot of rising awareness among women, and they do know what happens to them every month, and they are aware as to what are the cyclical changes and what are the outcomes of it. So they do come in with tests, they do come in with reports, and they ask us, like, can you interpret these for me? And we do have a bunch of funny situations where people do Google up a lot, and then they do come, and the patient is all nervous and anxious, which I can totally relate to. And then she says, when I reassure her, she says, I think I have cancer, so please help me, examine me, and let me know. And 99.9% of the times it turns out to be nothing major. So all we need is to guide and examine and channelize your tests. You don't really have to worry through the medical jargon. We are there to help you all.
Which obviously maybe indicates that these apps are amazing to use in order to get to know your cycle, but then you still also need an expert in order to verify this information.
You would see almost 99% of the women using these apps. Yeah. And I think if we look at beyond the social security, on a larger picture, the Apple study of 2019, I think women who menstruate lesser have a higher risk for, endometrial cancer, like in PCOD. So these kind of data can help women understand how they're menstruating over time, and what are their lifetime risks for any kind of cancers or any kind of medical problems. I think this is what we need to keep in mind by integrating the data of all these apps.
Thank you. So before we go into the workspace or workplace perspective, I like to ask you, Claire. So you target one common issue, which is PCOS among women. And maybe you can tell us a bit more about the underlying research that you apply in order for you to develop this product.
Yeah, thank you. So we're translating the work of one of our advisors, Dr. Steiner Victorian. She's the Chief Scientific Officer, former president of the APCOS Society, the kind of global research organization in this space. She's done a variety of studies, some preclinical, but also some clinical studies with cohorts of 1,000 patients. She used acupuncture needles to deliver electrical stimulation to these patients and looked at a variety of endpoints. So for example, she's proven out that electrostimulation for PCOS sufferers is as effective as metformin, which is, generally accepted standard of care for people with pre-diabetes who are heading in that direction. And it's as effective as metformin, but without the side effects. And so there's benefits on the reproductive or menstrual side of the condition as well. What we're doing is we're taking that research, and our core technology are microneedles on a flexible substrate. And so they're very, very tiny little, I'll call them hairs that penetrate just the outer layers of the dermis. And so what that does is, in the same way that acupuncture needles get through the skin, it just overcomes the electrical resistance that your skin provides. Your skin is this amazing, it's our biggest organ, it's an amazing barrier and protects us. But by overcoming that, you deliver a much stronger effect than you would with traditional kind of flat electrodes. Obviously, there's stainless steel needles out there that kind of messes up the skin a little bit, or gel electrodes leaves a mess. And so we're taking that research and translating it into a kind of convenient at-home device to target this condition. Now, it does, PCOS has consumed us because, when we started looking at this condition, the kind of quality of life impacts of the symptoms, but also those chronic health complications that are associated with it, we were kind of consumed with, if we can do something about this. Obviously, we desperately want to, because there aren't any great solutions out there today. But the platform is also relevant, for a range of other implications, obviously pre-diabetes and diabetes by extension, pain management, so more effective than kind of your standard TENS. But we're also working with partners on other conditions such as obstructive sleep apnea, overactive bladder, etc., with our platform.
Thank you, Claire. So let's move from the tracking part now to the organizational part. So women work, right? Like they have great positions and roles, and there sometimes it can be also a bit challenging. But then we still have the influence of the hormone. So Elisa, what do you think? What are challenges of today's women, with or without leadership positions, to deal with this hormonal fluctuations?
Well, Geraldine, it's interesting that you asked, and I'm very happy about this discussion, because when I'm a consultant of team leaders, and it has never been any topic, any question, it was just out of the equation. And from the part of the organization, you said organizations will also take care. I would it much more put in a should take care. And like Daniel said this morning, he wasn't aware to met sanitary napkins. I mean, in our organization, we don't have sanitary napkins. I mean, this would be a fantastic first step, to make visible. And now we have also gender neutral toilets, but to put sanitary napkins so it's visible. So also here visibility. So that I think that would be the first step in the organization. And the second thing is, well, I'm happy to talk about it because now we are aware we have different moods and we are moody, whether it is caused by menstruational causes, or maybe I slept well, or I'm not feeling well, or I had a tragedy in my family, but we are no robots. And so to have a discussion about that in the organization, and at the same time being moody, acknowledge being moody, but it doesn't give you the right, and doesn't give anybody the right to act rude. So differentiate the feelings we will acknowledge and we will take care of, and then thinking, okay, and how can react when are good times to decision making? Like you said, it influences the decision making, and that also needs a safe space in the organization. So especially as a leader, it's so much needed to create a safe space where these topics can be addressed.
So you mentioned somehow the women's perspective, but also what organizations can do. when we look again at the women's perspective, and I think it's very interesting that you said that this was never a topic, because I feel, based on my own experience, it is, like, at least in inner me, it is a topic. So what could be, or maybe open up for all of you, what could be potential communication strategies, at least to talk with supervisors, but also with colleagues when you are heavily influenced by hormonal changes? Maybe Dr. Smith.
I think there should be an informal forum where you can address yourself as to, you need certain additional emotional needs during this time. So probably having a non-formal conversation with the team members and forming a group wherein they can address these kind of grievances, and where there can be support sought from other team members as well, especially the other gender as well, because that'll make it more rounded in terms of an organizational decision. So I think that would help to a certain extent. But yeah, breaking the barriers of an organization with the gender, I think that may be a little uphill task for us to achieve.
Anna, do you agree, or what say communication strategies? What would you suggest?
Yeah, I do agree, but I would like to tell you a little anecdote and to have my 2 cents on this. So you said in the beginning that I'm a femtech business consultant. I am, and I also work as an independent contractor for one of the global fertility and family forming benefits providers. And so the trend among family forming benefits providers is to start offering menopause support, because it all comes down to being educated, right? And so there are a lot of companies around the world who are offering menopause support, miscarriage support, low testosterone support for men, to their employees. And so there are webinars, and for menopause support, for example, women are informed that they can reach out to a menopause expert so that they can discuss their problems. Well, what I would do is I would make sure that men are also educated on the subject. And I'm going to give you an example. I am 49, I'm obviously perimenopausal, and I don't think there is any shame in talking about it. And so during one of the congresses that I attended, I had 2 separate conversations with 2 femtech startup founders who were men. So I emphasize femtech startup founders. And in the conversation and talking about hormones, I at one point say, yeah, well, I'm 49, and in February I started having hot flashes and such. And so I didn't give any gory details, right? So I was just mentioning hot flashes in menopause. And I swear to God, both of them, they had a moment of surprise mixed with, like discomfort. Like I could feel their discomfort. And the first one was a shock to me, but the second one, like I just wanted to ask him, hey, seriously? I mean, if a femtech startup founder, men, can have such a reaction of discomfort when discussing menopause with a woman, you can only imagine what this gives to the average man. And so I think that the men should get educated about this, because these men, they have wives, they have sisters, they have mothers. And so it's also about men. Like, we should look at it like a global problem. We educate women on menopause, but women function in a society where they are surrounded by men. So why should I be taught, yeah, you should know how to handle your hormones during perimenopause, because you're going to be down, because you're going to be moody, because you're going to sleep poorly, and you're going to have fog brain and such. But how about we educate men too, that this is what happens? And then when they're the women, they're working in their company, maybe they do not function as effectively as before for the reasons that I previously mentioned. It's not because they all of a sudden turn dumb, or they're lazy, or they lost interest and they can't focus anymore. It's because there is a problem. And this is how you as an organization support these women and actually stop this hemorrhage of women, especially top executives, who are quitting their jobs when they enter menopause because they feel that they cannot meet the how do you say this? They cannot function at the same level of performance they used to do before. And so they feel that they're worth less and less, and that people look at them differently. So like I said, it's all about education, but the education should not be restricted to women, should be extended to the society in general.
Thank you, Anna. I think that's a perfect handover for the second panel, because this is exactly what we're going to discuss in the second panel. So time's up here, and thank you very much. But maybe one or two last short questions, inputs, notes about your own experience or what you wish, maybe also at the workplace. Sanjana.
So again, coming back to the workplace, to Eliza probably. So you've seen women grow into senior leadership. You've done like intense research on that. So what should organizations consider to help this transition in terms of your health and hormonal cycle?
Well, I think, pretty much that everything was already said, but I would also say that it's easier when it comes from the organization, that when each individual fights for the same things. So to raise an awareness of the organization and to have a commitment of the top management, which is not the buy-in in the top management, is not that easy. Like we heard from Oana, that even femtech founders were kind of shocked when it comes to menopause. So, but let's also take into account that there is much insecurity among elder men. It's not bad attitude or bad will that they don't want to, but they feel insecure. So I would really suggest maybe also as a team leader to have a very private conversation first with a manager I trust, and then to address these topics in private, because as soon as it goes public and everybody's awkward, then it can go in an awkward direction. Everybody makes it a little fun, and so it gets weird. So address these topics privately and individually.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, Claire and Oana, to log in today, and have a wonderful day. Thank you very much for being here. And then we take a 10-minute break and start at 3:20 for the last panel discussion today about menopause. Bye-bye. Thank you very much. Thank you. So we take a little break and then get back. I just need to follow the mic. Can you click the mic? How are you feeling? But it's okay. Also listen, I think it's exactly. Cindy. Yeah. Nitya and Elizabeth. Nitya and Elizabeth.
This one?
In the morning. Oh, yeah. Two others. Nitya and these two. Elizabeth. Hello, hello. Good. Okay. So welcome back to the last session we have today. And a very important session. And I all invite you to also sit a bit closer so that we have one comfy atmosphere here. So the last panel discussion of today is about menopause. And I have great panelists again here on stage, but also remote, even from the US. So some of our panelists got up at 3 a.m. just to be on this panel. So appreciate it very much. And a warm welcome to all of you here in this panel. So the context is just, I already mentioned it a bit in my keynote before. Menopause, somehow a topic that is still a taboo topic. We're also going to discuss about this, and what we want to discuss in this panel and give you here as an audience to think about it and to take at home is somehow like best practices and strategy, how you can deal with symptoms, but also how you can deal with them when you're, for example, at work and when you need to perform. Good. So I will do a quick introduction of our panelists today. So we have 3 panelists online. Cindy, you are the founder and the CEO of Forstater, company which created My Sisters. And My Sisters is a mobile platform for women during peri and menopause. Cindy is an attorney, journalist, and author. Thanks for being here, Cindy. Then we have Nitya. Nitya is a young entrepreneur with a strong commitment to improve women's health through innovative technologies. She's the co-founder of Rue Medical, and Rue Medical is a startup that developed a product to treat hot flashes during perimenopause and menopause. Hey, Nitya. Then we also have Elizabeth. I don't know if she is already here. If you're already here, then please turn on your camera. If you come later, we will see you later. Elizabeth is the CEO of Ember Labs. This is a wearable company that developed Ember Wave, which is the wrist-worn personal thermostat that helps improving sleep, relieving anxiety, and also helps with hot flashes during perimenopause. Then here in the room today in India with me is Dr. Sanjana. Dr. Sanjana Rao is a co-founder of Miara, and Miara is a digital health platform to empower women through perimenopause and beyond. And Miara focused on South Asian women. Welcome, Sanjana. And last but not least, Dr. Smita. She was here already in our first panel. She's a gynecologist, over 20 years of practice, and she works for Proactive for Her, which is an in-clinic here in Bangalore that focuses on providing a holistic care approach to women. Welcome, everyone. So let's start with you, Sanjana. Why is it important to talk about menopause?
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to see all of you still here, firstly. So why is it not important to talk about menopause? I mean, menopause is a life stage which is very important in a woman's journey of health. And there's a lot of taboo and shame and stigma associated with this life stage. So therefore, it is important to talk about. And it is also, it's kind of a bridge to what happens that women live a third of their life post-menopause. And that is also another reason to talk about it, because if you're healthy in your perimenopausal years, then you're healthier post-menopause. So these are just a few of the reasons to be talking about it here and now. And this is the proportion of people in the workplace in this life stage is the fastest growing demographic. So these are some of the reasons we should be talking about it.
Thank you. Cindy, looking at you, so what do you think are some common misconceptions surrounding menopause that contributes to the taboo as it is today?
Well, I think the biggest misperception is just that it's for old people. And, you know, I think if you look around, any of us look around at women our age, we're not what people think of as the gray-haired women, the grandmothers of our grandmother's generation. You know, we're the youngest generation to ever go through perimenopause and menopause. And so the more we talk about it, the more normal it gets. And really to reframe the entire conversation is so important. You know, we are so active. We are so engaged in life, engaged in the workforce. And I don't think people really expect that. You know, people expect menopause to be sort of ancient, and it isn't. And I think people don't understand perimenopause, what it is. People haven't even heard that word. And a lot of women haven't heard that word. And so just by putting it out there and having the conversation, it just becomes a normal thing. And it becomes a different thing from what people expect. And there's no, you know, we just take away that stigma. We take it from behind the door and we just make it a normal everyday thing. And we take away the shame. And I think that's the biggest thing. We take away the shame.
So when I talked with you, all of you, and prepared this panel, some of you mentioned the term invisible disability. Nitya, what does that mean, and what are the consequences of that?
So I mean, especially because, of course, I'm not menopausal, I'm still young. I haven't actually experienced it myself. And when I kind of went out and spoke to women that were experiencing menopause, I've kind of was taken aback, only because as someone who's just recently finished her education, I've never heard the word menopause ever. And I come from a STEM background. I've done biomedical engineering. And I've just never heard menopause ever. And the first time I came across it was actually when my mom was going through it. And she was as taken aback as me, which was very shocking to me, that, you know, it was something that everyone was, you know, it was kind of unexpected. And I guess that kind of brings out why it's kind of an invisible disability, because this just shows that there are hundreds and thousands of women that are going through menopause and are facing all of these severe symptoms, but they're essentially just hiding it away or morphing it as a part of life and just trying to cope and move on with their life rather than address it and, you know, ensure that their environment can actually provide better, you know, support or help for them to thrive, rather than kind of end up being in a place where they're really suffering, and which kind of causes a lot of women to end up just quitting their jobs, for example, and just saying, you know, enough is enough, I can't do this anymore. And then they pack up and leave, which isn't very fair, considering that it's a very, very natural progression of life. It's not something that, you know, one sub-segment of some ethnic group is facing. It's actually half of humanity that will go through it. So I guess that makes it a very big invisible disability of sorts.
Thank you. So we talked a bit about perimenopause, which is actually the phase when women start to experience the symptoms, and then menopause when they end having the menstrual cycle. And so let's talk about these hot flashes finally. Dr. Smita, what are hot flashes and why, or what happens in our bodies when we experience hot flashes?
Yeah. First of all, I would like to clarify that perimenopause is not something which is restricted to women above 40s or 50s. It can span any time from 30s, especially with women being exposed to more endocrine disruptors and the stress and the kind of lifestyle and premature ovarian failure. This is an entity which is, rising in concern. And we can have more number of women going through premature menopause starting from their 30s. So yes, hot flashes are the most important aspect of any premenopausal symptoms. I'm sorry. So basically, these are vasomotor symptoms. So there are episodes of vasospasm which cause these kind of hot flushes to happen. So these are the most alarming in terms of symptoms for women. So what we need to do is we need to identify the triggers which can cause these hot flashes, avoid warm environments, wear comfortable clothing so that you prevent the triggers. And once you prevent the triggers, it's much easier to handle. And the rest is holistic. I'm sure our other colleagues can help us with that. So it's more like dietary and lifestyle changes. Dietary changes, avoid caffeine, avoid any vasoconstrictors, which can, trigger these kind of vasoactive episodes. So basically, I think this should be the gist of it.
So Sanjana, you work with, or like your platform helps women navigating through this phase, right? So what are other symptoms that they experience, and what do you think is, or based on your learning, working with women, what is the biggest issue for them during the phase?
So what I would like to say is, while everybody talks about hot flashes, they kind of appear only very close to the end of the menstrual cycle, that is menopause. What starts happening before are 34 odd symptoms, and every woman experiences different kinds of symptoms. And I think all our panelists know about this really well. And it could start very simply with like sleeplessness or fatigue, or dry skin, or hair fall. And these are not things traditionally that people would associate with perimenopause or the end of a menstrual cycle. So that's what also makes it very difficult to kind of pinpoint a diagnosis. And I'm sure Dr. Smita will also agree with this. And from the lifestyle perspective, there are a lot of things that we can do, which are not only adjunct to the medical treatment that they can receive, but it's also a standalone kind of treatment option that a lot of people should be considering in terms of, how they manage their menopausal symptoms. So these are nutrition and, fitness and, just apparently sedentary life is the worst thing that you can do during your perimenopause than anything else. So just managing your activity levels, managing your diet can have a huge improvement and huge impact on how you feel during this life stage and how you manage it further on. And I'm sure.
Maybe Cindy, you want to ask, what do you feel like also working with women going through this phase? What are somehow the biggest issues for them during this, going through the menopause phase?
Really, a lot of the top symptoms that the women that use our platform are tracking have to do with pain. And then you get to like 9 or 10 and it's like irritability and anxiety. And I'm like, well, of course we're irritable, like we're in pain and we can't sleep. And then we wonder why we have anxiety and we're irritable. But I think that the overall thing, like I was in perimenopause and I felt like a science experiment, and I had all these things happening to me for 10 years before I knew that it was perimenopause. So I think a lot of what happens is women just don't feel good, but they don't know why. And they think that it's their fault. But we don't take time to just sort of tune in to ourselves because we're so busy. We've got kids and we've got the spouse and we've got work and we've got our parents a lot of times that we're taking care of. So it seems so indulgent to take 5 minutes in the morning and the evening to just pay attention to ourselves. But that's what we need to do, whether we're, just writing on a piece of paper or we're using an app or whatever. We just need to take a few minutes every day and just tune into ourselves. And if that's the one thing that we can get across to women, whatever age they are, just take a few minutes every day to tune into yourself that's the best thing that you can do. That's where it starts. Pay attention to yourself because you deserve that. And then go forward with everybody else, because then you'll understand like what is happening to your own body. And that's so important to understand what is happening to your own body, whether you're 22 or 32 or 42 or 52. You need to understand, how do I feel right now? And maybe you feel great, and that's wonderful. But then you'll know, okay, now I don't feel great. What's changed? And that's where it starts.
Yeah. And I think that's also a nice transition to our topic also today or of the panel, right? Understanding what can be strategies and best practices to somehow navigate through this phase, especially when we also have career ambitions and ambitious jobs. So Nitya, what would be your recommendation of like strategies or any kind of mechanisms women can do during this phase?
I think I'll follow up on what Cindy said. I think what she said was really important in the point that women need to take an active effort to either, educate themselves on what's going on with their body so they are better equipped to, see a physician, give them the right information so they can get the right diagnosis. Because like everyone's mentioned, menopause is quite ambiguous because there's so many symptoms that are so, not connected from each other, from different parts of the body, which can make it quite difficult for a physician to actually say, hey, what you have is menopause. So for example, one of the women that we were speaking to during our initial research phase, she was actually misdiagnosed to have cancer for almost a year before the doctor said, oh no, you're completely fine, you're just menopausal. Just, us trying to imagine the whirlwind she's been through for the last year of her thinking that she's actually maybe going to die or something like that. I mean, these things take a huge toll on your life, your career. And then finding out that it's just menopause and you're absolutely fine is just not, the best way to go about helping a woman transition to the next part of her life. During menstruation, I think almost every school, every home teaches young girls on how they should manage themselves, how this phase is going to treat them, what to expect. And unfortunately for menopause, that just seems to be missing, which is where kind of I think a lot of women end up losing out. So one of the big strategies would be to actually take an active effort to go out and look at information yourself and decide for yourself whether something is truly wrong with you or you're just transitioning into another part of your life. And think of coping mechanisms, either using the help of a physician or any other natural remedies that you wish to, take on.
Okay, so we talked about journaling, we talked about educating yourself and reading. What other strategies could be, or what else could women do, Sanjana, that you recommend also maybe through your platform?
So definitely finding a community of like-minded individuals helps, a community of women, finding a safe space for yourself to have these conversations. And in terms of awareness and education, don't just trust Dr. Google, reach out to to people who can give you evidence-backed information and, doctors or other professionals who can really provide you with the right information, not to scare you or, because there's also a lot of fear associated with this life stage because of how social media perceives it and things like that. So a lot of women are learning a lot of things, but it might not be the right things that you're learning and the right interventions that you're putting forward. So go to reliable sources, find out the right information, contact, people who do these awareness sessions, make your companies more aware of this. And I love the example of putting sanitary napkins in restrooms as a first step. I mean, I've never had it in any workplace I've worked in. I don't know about the rest of you in this room, whether you have it, but so far it's never happened. So that at least starts the conversation, and then educate everybody around you about this life stage. And then the first step is awareness, unfortunately or fortunately, and then you can move on to figuring out the solutions that can help you in this life stage.
Dr. Smita, do you have any specific, let's say, program or like educational maybe sessions at Proactive for menopausal women?
initially we began with targeting the more younger age groups, but now we are beginning to get aware that women at a 35 beyond segment need more hand holding and more, tailor-made tests so that they understand how soon are they approaching menopause. Because most of them walk in asking, doctor, I just want to know how many years do I have to enter into menopause, or I need to prepare myself. So we have a large number of aware women who want to know where they're heading, which is very true because they want to prioritize their career or their other decisions. So we are coming up with care packages where we look at certain hormones which predict their time to menopause. We're also looking at probably something holistic, like what Manisha does. It's a great job. So I think we should be able to merge things on those platforms. So this is what, and the other important thing is we need to also screen women for certain specific problems during these perimenopausal and menopausal years. So this is bone health, cardiac health, and screening for any kind of cancers. So these are three areas we want to look at, and we want to build a space where it is very easy for women to walk in and get the test done because of the hassles that are involved on a day-to-day basis. So hopefully we'll come up with it, and it'll be a good thing for women to walk in and do meet all their requirements.
Thank you. At least the people here in Bangalore know that they can go to Proactive for her. Before we take the company perspective, somehow talk what companies could do for menopausal women, is there anyone in the room who has a question now and maybe share her personal story? Yeah, there is one. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sharing from my own experience and experiences of my own friends of my age. We are well past all this, but I just want to tell you a couple of things. One is, most importantly, is, see, when they reach the menopausal stage, whatever she said, they may not be grandmothers or gray hair, but it's very important. There is a feeling of loneliness because your children would have detached your umbilical cord and they're moving out, they're busy, your spouse or partner, everybody is busy. So one of the feelings of why they go through depression is the lack of a kind of search for an identity of themselves, and they also feel that they've been doormats. It's very important that doormats that they've been taken for granted, because the most important at that time is they're yearning for somebody to give them maybe a hug or maybe empathetic, sympathetic with them. So this part is very important, that the men in the house who don't really go through this physiological process have to be conditioned and sensitized. Starts at home, especially if it's a teenage son, all the more. Because they go through their own mood swings. That doesn't mean that they can throw things and go away. They have to be sensitized. And secondly, it's very important that in Indian scenario, that we follow the practice of a physical closeness, a hug for no reasons. That's perfectly okay. Here we do it only when, oh, very good. And, things like that, or they think hug is associated with partner for other reasons. It's not. Because that physical closeness gives you that it increases your serotonin, whatever you can call it, at level, and it gives you a comfort level. So this is something what every lady will have to sensitize the family, immediate people around. In fact, I sensitized my driver, my chauffeur, because he was the one who would always get it. And I would tell him, see, you have a wife. So there is something good. I educated him on what perimenopause and menopause is, in fact, because that is the level we have to teach. Yeah, we have to. So I would always tell him, like if I scream at you, it's not because of anything else. It's just that I'm not in a really good mood today. So you better watch out. My warning. So that would make things much easier.
I just want to add something that when a woman is pregnant, there's this baby preparation course, right? That she goes for to prepare to have the baby. And I think it's common now in all countries why not do this for menopause as well? Have the partner involved, have the kids involved, have a little workshop for them to I think that would be a great way forward, and kind of what also that you're saying, sensitize the family. I think that's so important.
Thank you. Are there any other voices or questions here in the room? Yeah, I think in the back. Yeah.
I just wanted to share, Nitya was saying that your experience of menopause was when you first found out your mom was going through it. And actually that was exactly the same for me, because my mother, from a tennis playing, a golf playing, bridge playing, active human being, basically fell off a cliff, literally, mentally, post-menopause. So this journey into the idea of the havoc that hormones can wreak on your mental health is really, really important. And one of the things that I did to try and support my mother from a long way away, from a different country, was try and find drug-free tools. And I discovered two things here. One was that the medical profession was actually not hugely sympathetic or empathetic to the idea of hormones creating that kind of mental state, one. And secondly, that they were quick to think about drugs as a response, not necessarily hormone replacement, because that's a different type of issue, but drug-free tools. I found that actually, coming back to some of the ancient wisdom that we have here in India around yoga and meditation, and particular kinds of yoga, like what you might hear now as restorative yoga or yin yoga, or even kundalini, because it actually looks at the glandular system and the hormonal system in a more specific way. Those are tools that I discovered along the way, you know, to look for help for my mother and look for help for myself for the future proofing.
Thank you. One last question from the back.
Now, further to what you mentioned about sensitizing the whole family, I think we need to take ownership of that aspect as well, rather than waiting for somebody else to organize a workshop on the subject or introduce our families to it. I think each one of us can take the onus of involving our families, our friends, and sharing these experiences with them. We can start in a small way rather than waiting for a system to be put in place.
Thank you. Okay, so let's also talk a bit about what companies and organizations can do. So maybe Cindy, you can start with, what do you think like external organizations, companies, employers can do for women supporting during this phase?
Well, I think there are just some very basic things that they can do. You know, they can have a policy in place for how they're going to support women in menopause. And you know, men do go through a midlife phase too, called andropause. You know, they go through hormonal changes as well. They're, you know, different, but they go through hormonal changes as well. And the same support goes for them. So it's not just for women, it's for men as well. And, you know, they're very simple accommodations, if you will, you know, access to cold water, access to bathrooms, paying attention to room temperature and the ventilation, which is a huge deal for women who are dealing with hot flashes. Uniforms, you know, if you wear a uniform that has a tie around the neck, that can be very triggering for hot flashes. And some of these accommodations are only for a few months, but they make a big difference to women. And they're not difficult. They're not difficult for employers to do. They're very simple. So those are very, very easy. And when we were talking about resources earlier, there is an Indian Menopause Society. They're online. You can go. They have a handbook for women, very easy to look up. There's an International Menopause Society. There's a British Menopause Society. There's a North American Menopause Society. That's a great place for women to start. If they're looking for information, I do have a PDF for menopause in the workplace for women, how to talk to their managers. I do want to point out, though, that a lot of countries have laws against age discrimination. I could not find any laws in India against age discrimination. There's a lot of laws against discrimination in India, but there is no specific law against age discrimination. And with that sort of, I guess, correlation, you know, and stigma, menopause and age, that is something to consider for women working in India. You can do with that information what you will, but there is no specific law against age discrimination in India right now.
Is there any comment on that? How it is for you working at Indian workplaces? What would you wish for, maybe also to get support? Please take the microphone.
I just want to add on one thing that we don't even have a Hindi word for menopause, which is Hindi is our national language. And when we look at women's health in femtech, right? So we don't talk about just niche market, but also giving access to women, smaller towns as well. So it's solutions what companies are building is for all the women, no matter where are they based out of, right? So how do we really cover that in terms of the companies who are within that space? And this is, I'm not sure, is that really true? Because I haven't heard Hindi word for menopause. And that's like, again, really shocking because women who are at smaller towns or smaller cities, they are not even aware of that, what menopause is, right? So how do they get such solution? How do we really give them access to better health?
Ms. Anjana, you work in the Indian market. Like, what do you offer companies in order to help women go through the phase?
So from a company perspective, we offer awareness and sensitization programs. So it's organization wide. But I completely agree with you. That is, for the rural population, what we would like to do, and we've reached out to a couple of players, is, you know, through them, through the corporates, work with nonprofits where we could do it in the local language and things like that. So talk about these this life stage and provide solutions that are appropriate, culturally appropriate for that particular population. So we have this grand plan, but it requires the corporates to actually pay attention and listen to what we're saying.
There's another question in the back. Where's the microphone?
I've walked across India, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Singapore. And there were a lot of programs we did as part of inclusion and health. They ran marathons, they did yoga, but nobody actually addressed peripause, right? So I remember when I was going through it, I would get up and I would feel for 10 days, as she explained, when your hormone levels go down, I used to think, you know, this is the black box, right? And now I'm going to go through another 5 days, and then I'm going to be functional for 10 more days, and it's going to start all over again. But then when I started researching, I figured that I was sleeping only 4 hours a day. It was leading to sleep apnea. And there were so many other symptoms because mobile phones getting into your houses meant you didn't have any blur between work and personal. So then we started picking up the issues one by one. And then we went to the Diversity and Inclusion Council, and we insisted that some of the health wellness is something that we wanted to solve because there were a lot of people between 35 and 45. And one session we had was a yoga nidra session where we asked women, how many of you all are finding it difficult to sleep? And we actually called a yoga practitioner who came. 80 women turned up with their yoga mats in the middle of the afternoon at 2 o'clock. And from 2 to 4 o'clock, we just slept, right? So then she talked about, why don't we sleep, you know, drinking coffee at 6 o'clock in the evening, using your mobile phone. There was a 35-year-old who was supporting global teams, and she was waking up every hour to wonder why her phone alarm was not ringing. You know, that was the level of sleeplessness that we had. So I think we have a lot of people in this room. We may not be in HR, But we can go back to our organizations and say that, you know what, I would like to champion this. I would like to have a sleeplessness session. I would like to have awareness session. And I think even in our personal circles, even if it's a coffee where you're supposed to be there and turn up, to be perfect, you actually say, you know what, I had a sleepless night because I think I'm going through. And you just pause, and then the entire conversation fills up where people feel free to talk about it. So I just think we have to go back and trigger some of these sessions if we have gone through it, because that's the only way it starts, right?
Yeah. Is there any other question here?
Hi. So my entire team comes from, they used to be in the lower income bracket, right? So we're trying to change that, but I entirely work with women from lower income groups. Now, as you know, in our country, there's a lot of taboo and superstition that is, connected with menstruation. Firstly, menopause, I haven't even hit that yet. Let's first even try and handle this. Half of them don't even know why there is this process that's happening every month. And when I try to do my squiggly drawings and explain it to them, there's a lot of giggles and they don't really understand. So though as a the person who's heading this organization, I am trying to create some change, having the pads in the bathroom that was there from day one, converting them to cups. Okay, 50% success rate, I would say. But it's not that easy to implement these rules or these changes, or just to bring about an open space to talk about, maybe because of the background that they come from and the kind of experience that they've had in their house, or maybe it's different in the organization, but once they go back home, it's all back to the, the 19th century, how it is in the lower income groups, right? So how does a person like us, how do we tackle those kinds of situations? Because there's no education there. There's no they don't understand what we're trying to say, but it's for the greater good. It's for their benefit. Is there any way, have you worked with any organizations like me who are trying to help them, but there is obviously always a pushback from their end because of the lack of understanding? But so obviously first with menstruation, menopause, so we'll you'll have to probably advise me on when is a good time to start, talking to them about it, because we've not even completed the menstruation stage right now.
So I think you rightly brought out the fact that, most of the women in rural India are unaware as to what is the menstruation process and what actually happens, and the receptivity to the concept is very remote. So one modality would be when, when a child is educated about, sexual health, which I've had educated people walking into the clinic saying, I wasn't aware. Sadly, the only thing that is told about, sexual health in India is just about periods and nothing more than that, no information about safe sex and many other things that they need to understand. So I think the window should be during the school, or probably in by these healthcare workers like Anganwadi workers who are at the rural grassroots level. I think the acceptance is at a larger level from such people, because they are more like a family member. So I think that is where it should start, but it needs reinforcement at all levels. The reinforcement at the healthcare sector, when the patient comes with some symptoms, look, you're going through these problems. This is attributed to probably menarche or menopause, and you can expect these things to happen, and you need to come for a follow-up. So this, sadly, there's a stopgap in healthcare also, because of the large demand that the doctors need to meet in the government sector at least. But what we can do is private sectors can handhold with NGOs and other organizations like you guys who are doing a great job, to hold hands with people and educate them and create this kind of an awareness. I think corporates also can pitch into this and have their CSR programs, where they can, make it a larger than life picture, so that people do understand the three-dimensional essence of it.
One last one.
I'll just add to that. So first of all, great job for doing, doing this awareness bit. It's not many people who actually do that. And I also, echo what she says in terms of finding a bridge Find someone who will talk their language and, can be their counterpart. That's someone you could work closely with. And of course, at every level, there must be support from the medical practitioner to the healthcare worker that they are interacting with, to the community. So they should also have a safe place to kind of discuss it. So I think that's a great place to start, because what we do is we have something called Time to Unpause. We have sessions every month with a close circle of women, so they can just talk about anything that they want to under the sun. And a lot of these issues come up, and it's just a safe space. So create a safe space for women to have these conversations. Even for the rural or the urban setting, I think it's extremely important.
Thank you very much. Okay, one last question.
Well, finally, a man talking about it.
Yes, yes. That's great. Thank you.
Let me first congratulate you. I think it's amazing to hear all those initiatives that are being taken about it. But I was wondering, does it have to remain at this level of your organizations, and how do you rate the possibility to lobby decisions makers at the level of the government to have those sexual health sessions at the schools? I do remember we had that, and I can tell you also, when we were young, we were also mingling around, etc. And I think when I hear my kids here, that's the same thing now. I think that will always remain at a certain point, but somehow at least they learn a little bit about it. It's the kind of the first step of awareness of those issues. And I think I was wondering, because you focus obviously on the people, but I was wondering, is there also initiatives to kind of lobby or influence the policymakers at the national level, or even state level, or municipality level? I don't know what level you have. Might be actually quite difficult. I don't know if it's also a major taboo there to address those issues with them.
Yeah, maybe Cindy and Nitya. I don't know, did you hear the question well? Yeah, Nitya.
Yeah. Cindy, please go ahead. I'll go after you.
I think anytime you try and get a government to do something, you're sort of banging your head against the wall. But it's always easier to get the grassroots started, and then kind of the government follows. But yeah, it's an excellent question. I have not had very good luck getting governments to lead the way. I always find that if you start with the grassroots, and then politicians figure out that if they jump on board, it looks good for them, is sort of the way to go. Which happened in Australia, actually. That's there's a big menopause push in Australia right now, and that happened because politicians figured out that it made them look good. So
thank you.
That's the way to go. Start with the people, and then politicians follow.
Yeah, I think that's the same in the UK. There's been a lot of media push about menopause in the recent couple of years. One of the reasons is, of course, a couple of politicians picking it up, but it's also because a lot of celebrities have spoken about it, openly on, say, famous talk shows or in the news, and that's kind of sparked a conversation. So a lot of workplace menopause support, programs, etc., have come into place in the last, 24 months. Significant change, in the past couple of years. And at the end of the day, it is for a good cause. So, I mean, I would say rather than targeting the government or anything, it's about just increasing the scope, trying to get more people on the, same wave of going through some kind of menopause training, etc., and hoping that will make a big enough impact that the government will put in solid reforms in the future.
And you have to point out how it benefits the taxpayer. And in the UK, the way it benefits the taxpayer is they need to keep that portion of the workforce in the workforce. Because if the women in their 50s and 60s leave the workforce, they start collecting their pensions, and they're not putting taxes into the coffers. So if those women leave, they're taking out and not putting in. So they have a really vested interest in the UK in keeping those women in the workforce. So that's why there's that real big push in the UK to keep those women in the workforce. In the US, there's not that same, it has not been able to get that same traction. You know, in the US, your healthcare, your health insurance is tied to your job. So you're not really able to leave your job like you are in the UK. So, you know, they don't care. In the US, there's no paid maternity leave. You know, you're not going to see the same support for menopause in the workforce that you see in the UK.
So I'll just add something to that. I think we've not really discussed it here, but what is very important to remember is women want to leave the workplace because of not being supported during this life stage, and that causes a major productivity loss. And also there's a huge healthcare cost. And as we know, we all pay out of pocket in India most of the time. And you can't imagine if a woman is made to go to 5-10 specialists, what the costs amount to. So, you know, intervening and making governments, insurance providers, policymakers understand the impact of this is extremely important. So there's also the economics of and the cost of menopause on the quality of life of women that needs to be appreciated in this discussion. And coming to your question about what we are doing in terms of government and policy, so we've started, so there's a big pushback not only from corporates, but also from government organizations. So what we've said is we'll come to your organization, either do it for free or for a minimal cost, just to have these sessions. But we've also started going into universities, talking to you know, professors and lecturers and school teachers, so that, you know, everybody at every level of an organization is aware of this life stage, and there has to be a government, you know, input into all this, because otherwise things will not change. So there has to be change in policies. So we're hoping that's a good start and we're on the right track.
Thank you, Sanjana. Thank you, Dr. Smita. Thank you, Nitya. Thank you, Cindy. Thanks a lot for being here today, for waking up, for taking the time. Really appreciate it. And thank you for being here today. I think it was a great day. I hope you learned a lot. We hopefully can also share the digital record of that if you want to somehow share it with your colleagues. So from my side, thank you very much. I don't know, Deepika, if you want to add something, but oh, there's Sveta. Yeah, you want to come up here? Go a bit in the screen.
Right. I think this is more or less calls for a lot of thank yous. First of all, for the people, all the women and the men who've been part of this very important discussion, because it's time that these discussions become mainstream. And that is essentially why we at Swissnex, along with our partners, Jose and Tech for Eva, who share the same common vision, have really come together to host something like Winspiration, to provide a safe space for everyone to talk about the issues that are normally brushed under the carpet. But our motivation is also that you have very concrete takeaways from this curated day put together. So our idea was, like in the morning, you had a session on unconscious bias. I mean, to more or less be aware that these biases really exist. But how is it that we can develop or employ our own strategies in order to counter them, to further ourselves, and to also further our colleagues or our circle of influences moves into, I think, leadership roles. And you also heard, for example, that there are several very forward-looking policies that companies have employed, or even startups have employed, so that, you know, we can encourage gender diversity at each and every level. The idea is that you also can take this back to your own organizations to encourage your leadership to apply this in the team. I think a very nice takeaway we also heard from, even from the government side, where we always think rules are set in stone. to bend them wherever it makes sense, right? So if you feel it's not possible to lobby for something like that on a large 4,000 member organization level, start small, start in your own team, for example. And yeah, and I think thank you again for bringing this topic of hormonal health for women. It's a very important part of who we are, right, as humans, but also taking into account our own hormonal well-being and how is it that we can really align this, use all the technology that's available. I mean, now we have a lot of femtech to help us as well. Our grandmothers or mothers were not so lucky to have it all. So here's a glimpse of some of the things that are available to be used, but how is it that we can use them again and also spread the word? So I think I would also like to thank our sponsors, the Switzerland India 75 initiative, and both Switzerland and India remain committed to this topic of having women diversity across all levels. And this is a very important dialogue in that direction. So I want everyone that's present here, to take that and share their takeaways, for example, with us, because there is a lot that we learn from sessions like this, but also we can all learn from each other, right? So yeah, thank you very much for being here today. And hopefully through our other initiatives, we would like to be in touch with you as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think the last word really goes as thank you to the team led by Deepika, who put this day together. So a nice round of applause. And Geraldine, who's been putting together these virtual panels and femtech leaders from across the globe. So thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. Bye-bye.